and take it away.
Hey everybody, thank you for coming to the session. Since it's small, feel free to get on mic. Okay? That's absolutely no problem. Feel free to get on camera. Really feel free to interrupt us. So while we're here, we might as well start by asking the question, what is your relationship with languages? And I'm going to say, your background and also your current occupation, and maybe even some aspirational parts of this. So Deanna, why don't you start? My co-presenter Deanna, why don't you start?
Yeah, hey everyone. My name is Diana Montealegre. Obviously, English is not my first language. I'm actually from Colombia. My native language is English and Portuguese because we are like right next to Brazil, so we're like learning. um, I started actually teaching in higher ed in Spanish and English because I was teaching ESL back in Colombia. That's how I actually started my teaching journey. And then I started moving to instructional design. And now here in the US, I actually am working, having the opportunity to develop a whole program entirely in Spanish, which is challenging, but at the same time, super exciting. So that is my background with languages. I wish that the new administration didn't do what it did. I mean, let's face it, more than half of the population in the US speak another language. So I didn't. Anyway.
I'm Kay Novak. Let's see. I grew up with a Polish grandma, babciu, loads of Russian, loads of Russian Polish relatives. It was not uncommon for it not to be the predominant, that to be this mishmash of languages, and also grew up in I'm older, grew up in an old timey kind of neighborhood where lots of Eastern European immigrants. You always heard words. English wasn't always spoken, but you just got used to it. It wasn't anything weird. I went into the military. I was a linguist in the military. So I did interpretation, I did translation, I managed groups of interpreters and translators. I'm now learning design manager. We're dipping our toes into courses that are in a language other than English. We are also dealing with requests for OER courses in, for example, Chinese, that the Chinese classes that are being taught as language classes be taught using all OER. And from my background, from being a linguist, I see lots of I see lots of problems there too. So that's where I'm coming from. Anybody else like to talk about where you're coming from? And it's okay if you don't. I'm gonna point a finger towards Chris because Chris is at our is in our community college system here in Colorado, and I have like this notation when it comes to languages about how he's a dean and he's over manufacturing and welding, and you had interpreters on the floor of your welding, and why don't you discuss what they were for?
Sure. So as Kay mentioned, I'm Dean over Business and Manufacturing. My institution is considered a Hispanic Serving Institution, so an HSI. And one of the things we have been doing is here in Denver is working with a lot of the refugee and immigrant populations as they came in, to help them adjust quickly and to look at how do we assist them in getting into various industries that they were interested in. In the case that Kay mentioned, what it was is we had a local nonprofit that was working with one of these groups, And one of the individuals was interested in welding, and so we are trying to work with them as far as how do we manage our primarily English-based, well, our all English-based curriculum, and how do we go ahead and do and start looking at how do we make it more welcoming for those whose English is not their first language. So one of the things we were looking into is translanguaging. One of the challenges for those of you that are familiar with interpretation is when you start entering an industry like welding, a lot of the terminology and stuff that's being used is very specific. And so, and
Mhm.
a lot of our issues was the individual assigned to interpret that varied by day to day, and they did not have an industry background. So a lot of that was one of the main challenges for my instructors and faculty was going ahead and how do we look at translating very, very specific industry terms and abbreviations that are common into and trying to share that and explain that to someone who cannot access any of our resources because they're brand new to the country and had no prior training or education in learning English. So there's a challenge there. And also on our business side, a lot of our focus is on international business. And so a lot of our focus there was also looking at language competencies and working with fun things like folks who don't come from a neoliberal or a capitalistic
Mhm.
society and trying to explain those concepts of profit and loss and different things like that. So it's kind of interesting. So that's my interest in the presentation today.
And Kristen gave us something in chat. So if people look at their chat, um, she states that a couple of years ago she worked on a program that was being rolled out as it was being developed and translated to Latin American Spanish and French on a very short turnaround. And yes, it's we found with our learning management system Desire to Learn, if we wanted to turn it into Spanish, um, we had to decide on the Spanish. And what Kristen said about French, yes, difference between also a difference between which French do you choose. I see Daniel's already putting it there. Grew up owning English, lived abroad in Japan where I taught English. Yes. And so we're having people who have lived abroad. We're also having people who have worked with English, English language learners, ELL students. Um, and if anybody else wants to share, they can go ahead and share too. And it's okay if you don't feel like sharing right now. You can share with us a little later. But here's what we're gonna go over now. Might not be politically popular with administration right now, but you'll hear us using this term, linguistic imperialism, and that language is one of the most durable legacies of European colonial and imperial expansion. So while we're doing our language and linguistic justice, you might hear us referring to this term. So that you know what we're talking about. Chris has already brought this up, neoliberalism. Okay. And Chris put a link to the slides, and you'll also see Chris will be putting like in our notes and our references also in there as they go. This is a book that one of my peers from one of my doctoral classes, we had to write a book review, and we wrote it and on this. He's like, hey, let's write it on this. And we did. And it's been downloaded our review's been downloaded over 2,000 times, which astonishes us. But we're seeing that it's probably very popular at the moment. But if we mention neoliberalism, this is what we mean. And, our current administration, you might be seeing that this applies to our current administration in the US. Now, with linguistic imperialism, some of the things that often are associated with it are a loss of language diversity. such as an executive order that came out on March 1st that designated English as the official language of the United States, a loss of language rights, globalization, and then the last one, economic rationalization. And if anyone reads the executive order, you will see that there is a lot of what could be considered economic rationalization that is put into the executive order from March 1st. Okay, so these are the things that we wanted to show you really quick, and everything we have here is available. And Chris, you can go ahead and share it also. What I'm going to do under this one, our list in 2024, we'll pull up here, is we started this list of terms and constructs for justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. This first one being like the oldest university in the world, in Fez, Morocco. It has other terms like borderland theory, critical whiteness, Chile climate, critical race theory, culturally relevant pedagogy. So this was our list in, that we had been working on 23, 24. And then I will go back here to the list that we went ahead and put up. This is from a New York Times article. These are the words that the federal government and the agencies are flagging to be taken out: accessible, advocate, bias, climate, lots of cultural, anything that you can think of, DEI, diversity, equity, Gulf of Mexico. So we're in a different climate this year than we were last year. But we still think that figuring out how to be more than monolingual and monocultural is important for education. And I'll go back to our slide.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, please.
By calling it linguistic imperialism,
Yeah,
you're implying that it's bad, but there are many benefits to a worldwide common language. The one that comes to mind is that at the time of the Roman Empire, Greek was a common language across the known world, and that enabled commerce and enabled interaction and enabled lots of good stuff. It seems like there are definitely benefits to a common language. Now, for everybody to understand, it has to be one language.
I will say, if you are suggesting we have a bias, yeah, we do. Straight up, we have a bias. Do I think that a common language, say for commerce or something like that, can be good? Absolutely. I think it can, but I don't think you have to erase other languages. And I don't think you have to I don't think you have to erase other languages, and I don't think that you can't use or celebrate other languages. So common language to be able to do things, yeah, all for it. All for communication, but the erasure of other languages and cultures, no. So when I say linguistic imperialism, and from the definition, I absolutely mean policies that say don't use a certain language. Yeah, so and I'm okay. We can agree to disagree. and we can have loads of beautiful discussions about this too. So what I'm saying with this slide at least is, our list of forms of terms and constructs, and then the New York Times, what is coming out as for forbidden words. And just putting this, and this goes back to the linguistic justice and linguistic imperialism. These are some of the certain things that end up getting discussed, is like, how are you looking at languages? Is language a problem? Like, oh, we need everybody to speak this one language because speaking more than this other language is not, causes problems. Also language as a right. And this goes back to, if you're introducing a language, how is your college or school, maybe your classroom looking at it? Do students have the right to use more than one language in the classroom? And then language as a resource. And it says, refer back to Derek Bell, critical race theory and interest convergence. Language as a resource is often talked about in like business courses, where it's like, oh, well, it would be useful if our students could speak Chinese because then they could do business in Chinese. So that's language as a resource. And so this is just some of the overlay about how we'll be talking about it. And there's different ways to look at languages, and even to look at what about one language. Also throwing out here, community cultural wealth. This is from Yasso, 2005. One of the cultural wealths is linguistic capital. Can you speak in, when you were growing up in your community, could you speak more than one language? Did you learn a second language? I mean, the linguistic capital I got from the community that I grew up in was no fear of a language other than English. No fear of trying to learn things as you go when it comes to languages. So that's like some of the things I got. I'm also from a place that is very union heavy, so I got a lot of resistance capital in the community I grew up in too.
Yeah. If
Go ahead, please.
Sure. I mean, one of the things that I look at as well is just in our current educational environment, where we're trying to, number one, alleviate students of this imposter syndrome, where they feel like they don't belong, or they feel like they're faking it. One of the ways to do this, as I see it, is using these very linguistic models, or looking at translanguaging as a way to provide resources and provide information for our students to see that they still have a lot of these pieces, especially at the community college level. We do a lot with prior learning assessment, or momentum credit, as we call it. And so it's really looking at students who are bringing in, most of our students are adult students. They are not traditional students. So what I mean by that is they have families, they are working full-time jobs, they are not coming directly out of high school. Most of them have been in the industry for a while. And so they're bringing in these experiences that they have, and it's really sort of helping them understand how that can match up and navigate, as well as assist them in getting quicker to their degree aspirations. And I see Daniel has a question for you, Kay, in the chat.
Yeah. And here's what I'm going to say. And hi, Daniel. And I'm going to say hi from Farah Bennani also. I'm sure she'll be coming in soon. Here's my thing. It depends on the class and the activity, and it's truly, and that's my opinion. I will tell you, for my design thinking class, if you want to do your individual project in a language other than English, we let you do it. We've also brought in material from languages other than English, so that you can do it. For us, it's very important that you that you could reach. It's business in the creative industries. It's important that you can reach a global audience. It's also okay if you bring in jargon, vernacular, if it's a marketing project, text speech or slang, because sometimes, the text speech or slang is the right way to market. Now, when they have to write out the business plan, I am very strict on that one. And Deanna, you take it over.
Yeah, I know that this question wasn't asked for me, but I have a particular conflict with that. Just because I understand, me not being, English not being my first language, I understand the need to follow certain rules and, guidelines and APA and grammar and all of that. But I agree with Kay. It depends on the class. I mean, if I'm majoring in English and, writing, obviously that's a critical role in it and important. But if it's any other sort of class, I would not be so strict with that. Now with AI, like at least for me, I'm actually writing all of my papers and running them through AI. Hey, correct my grammar, because I know that I'm going to make an oopsie. But before AI, when I was teaching up front range, I was not super strict with that. I will understand that everybody has, makes mistakes. Even people that English is first language, they still make mistakes. So I was not, super hang on that. And when it comes to translators, I'm actually experiencing that right now, working with Spanish population in the learning education with front range. And one instructor in particular was actually taking everything and running it through Google Translate. And it was just a disaster, a total disaster. I mean, I don't trust Google Translate whatsoever. I don't trust it with my own languages, let alone with some language that I'm not familiar with. Because I know that if it's making mistakes in Spanish and Portuguese, it's going to make mistakes in something, I don't know, German that I don't know or something like that. And I won't know, and I'm going to just, look like a fool, words. So no, I'm not a fan of translators yet. Maybe someday they will get better, but as of right now, not really.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Yeah. I gather from what I've heard that we're saying that English is okay for business kinds of things, but multiple languages to be encouraged for other things. But one of the things that happened in the Roman and Greek world was that the common use of Greek enabled common ideas to spread across um, the world. I mean, the leaders in philosophy, Plato, Aristotle, were Greek, and that learning was enabled to spread across the world. But for Chris, I'm glad to hear that you're at a junior college because the people that are being trained in welding are going to have to go out into the welding world where instructions and manuals and technical information, all those kind of things are written in English. I wonder if to make them feel included, that competence in English ought to be almost a prerequisite for their field.
It is for any associate's degree. All students must take English Comp 1 and English Comp 2 for them to get their associate's degree. So primarily what we're seeing, and at least from my perspective in translanguaging, I'm looking at our intro courses, which will be taken during the first or second semester, and it's a way to facilitate facilitate that language acquisition. And so it's more about providing additional resources for students. We would still keep we still keep our English language curriculum, but then we'd also have additional resources for students whose English is not their first language, and so we base that off of our demographics of our students. So for me, I'm taking definitely more of a business approach than I think what possibly what Kay and Deanna are looking at. So for me, it's definitely looking at more of providing a competency that's there, so that way the students will still learn English. It's just we're trying to facilitate that knowledge acquisition and provide them with enough wraparound support to help them be successful. Because a lot of our non-native speakers, when they come into our initial classes, there's a lot of struggle that that has to be overcome. And this is a way that all of the colleges are looking at our enrollments, all the colleges are looking at our student success numbers, and how we're being evaluated. And so we're looking for a wide variety of different opportunities that are ways we haven't been doing things in the past, and it might be a way to help improve those results. And so that's one of the reasons why, at least for me, why I'm looking into translanguaging and why I'm looking into these types of language acquisition pieces for my curriculum work as we start building in review modules and additional wraparound support.
Good points. Thank you.
Yep.
And and I would go back to, as far as the Greek thing, and one language, I'm still gonna fall on that people's culture should be preserved, and I don't believe there should be a requirement for one language. And when it comes to meeting with people who speak other languages, there is a synergy that can happen, and ideas can be brought across. I think we can still do that.
Oh, okay.
And I
Now,
think
just to
honestly,
be clear, you're not saying that people are being forbidden from speaking a certain language. That's been done in the past.
Yeah.
it still
Okay.
is. And I'm a living experience of it. I was kicked out of a store because I'm speaking in Spanish.
And also, Deanna, you also said about how your children got put in a classification because
Yes.
they're from a bilingual household.
Yes. Even though they're absolutely fluent in English, they don't have any problem with English. They got separated just because they have a second language.
So that's our part about education looking at linguistic justice, from the full continuum. And heteroglossia, just tossing this out here, this is a word that Chris gives us all the time. At different times, things will be called different things. And thank you, Bruce, for getting us to clarify linguistic imperialism. We're going to say out here, linguistic justice, people use that term for lots of different reasons. This is the book that has come out most recently about linguistic justice. And most of the time when people talk about linguistic justice, a lot of times they're talking about the code switching, the way you have to alter your speech and language directed towards dominant and non-dominant interactions. I know yesterday Brandon started to talk about it, about how we as educators are code switching when it comes to certain terms right now. Let me continue on. And then this I put up here, this was from 2020, the Special Committee on Composing, and this is from this is at the higher education level, English professors writing composition. Their professional organization is this 4 C's. And this is their statement on linguistic justice. And for me, some of the questions we were asked, like Daniel asked, for me and the class that I'm teaching, it depends. It depends on the activity. It truly depends on the activity. I'm teaching in business and creative industries. My students, when we have them do Picha Kucha that introduces themselves as creatives, most of my students identify their ethnicity and their family background. Going back to that cultural capital, most of them identify like that way without me having to give them any kind of prompt on that. And most of them mention if they speak a language other than English. That's usually absolutely part of their Picha Kucha introduction. And Chris, you can put in there, you can put a link on what Picha Kucha is for anybody who's unfamiliar with it. Just wanted to put out here, so to further discussion, how are you looking at language in your methodology? Again, pulling the, is language a problem? Is it, oh, gotta get everybody speaking this way, using things this way? Is language a right? You bring in your culture, or is language a resource? Look, if you know how to use a language, whether it be English or another language, this will be a resource for you, for your career, for your family, and everything like that. Looking at our own practices, and this is interesting, and this was actually brought up with me to somebody about when we were talking about intersectionality. When you have your students filling out forms, do you put like non-native English speaker, or do you put what is your first language? I've had educators, come and talk to me and go, I'm raising my children bilingual or even with 3 languages, and we don't privilege any specific language. And Daniel, how are they identifying Black languages? I imagine there would be a diversity of language uses. Yes, excellent point. Is it centered on opposition or dominance or a family resemblance? Interesting. And Hillary just put in, I'm a former ESL teacher from Illinois. Here we classify students from bilingual households because the students may need help in general education. We have a standardized test and the ELS tag is dropped if they are speaking and comprehending a grade level. Excellent adaptation. I have met with students who need a little language support. There are many types of bilingual households. Absolutely. Some who only speak Spanish at home need some help in school. Yes, there is a variety when it comes to bilingual households. Deanna, go ahead.
So that's kind of what the school districts in Colorado do, but they're failing on something. When you register a kid in a school, no matter what district it is, you put if there is a second language in the household, which I did. We have 2 more languages in our household. And without even testing the kids, they immediately put them in these classes just because I mark a second language. There is no test at the beginning. They just actually take the form that I filled out and immediately place them in this class. I receive a form saying, hey, your child is being placed in an English, proficiency or something like ESL class, because you mark this, and I have to sign it, and I am forced to sign it. I cannot opt out of it. I talked to the teacher that actually takes care of that at the school district where they are, and they told me that this is coming from the state level and that she cannot do anything about it. So I had to sign it, and then they test them out again. And even if my kids actually test 100% fluency in English, they still will keep them in that class until I think 3rd or 4th grade. And they are not differentiating between having a learning disability versus English deficiency, because my child has a learning disability. He's dyslexic. So they're confusing his dyslexia with his fluency in English. So they continue to keep him in this class, even though he doesn't have any issue with English. And that's the part that is a little bit frustrating, at least again, here in Colorado, because they're not really actually taking into consideration the evaluations that they do, or, testing them out or any of that. They just taking into consideration that there is a form and I click a second language in the class, in the house. That's it.
Okay, and just this is something that we put together for our justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, looking for OER and things like that. But looking in language, is language a resource? Do you have students who speak an indigenous language? Is this being incorporated? Is slang being incorporated? Is translanguaging also being brought in? And by translanguaging, what we mean by translanguaging is, are there resources being brought in, not exact translations, but are sources being brought in a language other than English that students can refer to if English is not their first language? In our business and creative industries, we've seen that in the design thinking, students will go over to the Spanish resources, even if Spanish is their second language or not even their second language, to get some terms and also to include things. Again, this is students who have an associate's degree in something creative, and then they're taking business classes. So we see the students, they are branching out, and we're almost done. What I'm saying is, I'm gonna do a shout out to 2 different organizations. The National Association for Multicultural Education, awesome. They've been doing this kind of work with culture and languages forever. And then the last thing that I was going to say, our keynote today is from Hawaii. And some of us also have an association with the TCC. It's Technology Communities and Colleges Conference. And what I wanted to say is with this, they do intersperse some Hawaiian words in the conference that the moderators say and things like that. And at this conference, you know, like if you're ever nervous about saying aloha or mahalo and you're helping out like with moderating, the people who are native Hawaiians who speak Hawaiian natively tell us to please use our language, because our language sustains the more people use it. And not to feel like it's cultural appropriation during this conference to use the words like aloha and mahalo and the other words that they give you for the conference. So I'll stop my share there. And so the rest of this is going to be discussions. So Deanna, did you want to talk? I know you want to talk a little more, so talk a little more.
What do you want me to talk about? You know, I can talk about everything.
Okay. So what we've been dealing with, besides bringing in some translanguaging, we've also been dealing with instructional design in languages other than English. We've been dealing with that a lot. So if you have questions, if you like to put things forward, if you'd like discussions about anything else,
and the limitations and the walls that we find when we're trying to do instructional design in a language that is other than English, just because of how the LMS were designed. It's not an easy click here and switch to Spanish to make it accessible. It's very complex. It has to be admin levels. You have to go into the HTML, and let's face it, a lot of our instructors are not familiar with this. So they put a lot of barriers for instructors and instructional designers when it comes to creating content in the LMS other than English. Because there has to be certain technical level that you must have when it comes to this. You need to know how to code to a certain degree. You need to have access to backdoors to be able to change the menu from English to Spanish or from English to Chinese. I don't know. You need to know, all of these little tags in HTML to change the language. And there is not a quick fix to like apply this to all of the pages. You have to go, oh, Farah is here. Sorry. And you need to go like page by page. So I think that's another problem that we encounter a lot too, is that a lot of the educational tools, and not only the LMS, but any extra tool or any external tool that you bring, they have restriction. Even Discord, we actually tried to do that. Kay and I want to increase. One time we actually like tried to switch it to Spanish, and like halfway through the page, it just turns into English again. I was like, yeah, what just happened? So it's a lot of barriers that we find. Hi, Farah.
Good afternoon. Finally, I'm in. Yes. How are you all doing?
Pretty good. We went over some of the things, and right now we're really in discussion. So why don't you introduce yourself and your relationship to languages, and then me and Deanna will think of questions for you while you're doing that.
Good afternoon, Farah Bennani. I'm the Dean for Math, Science, and Engineering. I'm here in Illinois, so joining live from close to Chicago. Languages, I don't know, I have an accent, so I speak 6 languages. I have done a lot of work with Kay and Chris in previous life, and still continue to do. And right now, I'm involved with Diana, Kay, and Chris in another linguistic project. So I love languages. It helped to read and to find out what's going on in other parts of the world and see how we can bring them here to the student we serve as well as the project. So as I joined, I was hearing Diana in terms of the language. So on our college website, when we have the click Spanish and the web page will be translated. Funny enough, because Spanish, like in French, you have masculine and feminine adjective. So I am listed as decano and I am decana for that. So I did point this to our marketing office. So for them to follow up with whomever the company that they have used for that. So happy to answer any question. Make it in French would be easy, but it's okay. Never mind.
and I'll just show you some of the thing that Farah's been working with us. I've been mentioning the design class. Already did that, but here, you know, Farah has helped us get, you know, helped us get Arabic, and one of the reasons we're doing Arabic is because in our northern Fort Collins area in Colorado, after Spanish, Arabic is the leading language in the school districts, and the leading language just for services. So we end up with students who, when they identify themselves as creatives, they identify their cultural background, and so this is design thinking in Arabic. Farah helped us find this.
Yes.
This is what it looks like English. Okay, Arabic. The 5 steps of design thinking. Another thing when you're doing this, Arabic is not written the way that English is written. And if you're the instructional designer for this, there's a whole lot more formatting you have to do and things that you have to look at just you know, just at the formatting, just at the HTML level. When you're bringing things in. Again, these are the 5 for that. This is another great interaction design. They were very nice to us, so we could get things. The other thing is, one of our students was interested in jewelry making, and jewelry making in Arabic. And these are Farah can say these words. I cannot.
Gifts personalized if you are thinking of any other language. So yeah, think about something like that.
You know, this kind of jewelry is popular, and my student was looking for a business opportunity, and she focused on that the quality isn't as great when you order it, because you don't know what the quality is, as opposed to if she went to shows or sold it on a site and built up a reputation. So again, we helped her with that, and I'll get out of that one.
Necklaces like that are extremely common in Saudi Arabia, and I worked over there for a while, and lots of the expats bought them. I mean, my wife has one.
Yeah. And that was something that our student was looking at. How would she do this? How would she do this for the population? You know, this population, immigrant population for us up towards the Fort Collins area. And I guess that's one of the things I wanted to put as an instructional designer, like Deanna and Farah have mentioned. Things don't necessarily translate over well. You have to really think about the formatting, the HTML. How are you going to put things? Farah and I did can you tweet in another language, right? We did this before when it was Twitter, not when it was X. But I mean, the first time I had to adjust things, it took me quite a while. It took me quite a while to figure out how we were going to send those things out, because it was always going to the wrong area to center, and it was driving me nuts. The other thing we also had to consider for that tweet chat, remember, we had to make it not on a Friday. Okay. while in the US, Friday you can still have things happening. It wasn't necessarily working out well when we wanted
Sunday. In some
Yeah.
parts of the world, it's their Sunday.
Yeah, yeah.
It's their Friday.
So there was a lot of considerations, but the thing of it, it's not bad that we have to do these considerations, and it's not bad to have our students do these considerations. There's a whole field, there's a whole field of, it's called hybridization, and it's education looking at how do you bring in English and Spanish, and it really goes back to borderland theory. When you have people who are living on a border that could go either way, that culture can flow back in and and to the edge. A lot of the universities in California, in their departments of education, they concentrate on this a lot. We're here in Colorado, and and as one of my friends said, his people didn't cross the border. His people did not cross the border crossed him. He's out of La Junta, Colorado, and it used to be part of Mexico. So when it comes to language and linguistic justice, this whole session was supposed to be about consideration of this. So we have less than 5 minutes. Any thoughts or any ideas or questions or comments anybody would like to make?
This is.
Yeah, to go back to, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Bruce, because I'm going to be off topic.
Oh. Yeah, Diana posted a question in the chat a while back. I mean, if we want to get technical and globalize the most common language, then we should switch to Mandarin in the USA. Granted, there are more Chinese people, I think, than any other ethnic group in the world, but the number of people speaking it is not necessarily the deciding factor. I would not want to bring in all of the cultural baggage that comes with China, with the Chinese language, and make it the dominant thing in the world. Now I'm biased to a certain extent because I live here in the U.S., but would you choose between the communist Chinese regime and America and pick them?
I'm not talking about culture, I'm talking about language.
Yeah, she's talking you're talking data, right? Like numbers.
Yes, I'm talking data. So data speaking, there is more people who speak actually Mandarin than English in the world. So I'm just talking about language, not culture per se. Like me speaking Spanish here in the US doesn't mean that I'm going to actually bring my culture to you. I can speak to you or in a store in Spanish. Doesn't mean that I'm going to actually force my culture into people.
Ah, okay. Yeah, I mean, culture and language are pretty intimately intertwined.
The other thing that I'll just put a link to, since Chris is putting links to everything, and I don't know if anybody will find this interesting or not, but like this was like background info that Chris was digging. Chris is the person who digs for us, so he was digging through the different the census for the different like counties, and there was, especially in northern Colorado, you could see that the school districts had lists of all these different languages, but then when you went over to the census wasn't reporting it. And that's another thing, in our current situation, I don't think it's going to change. I think we're going to have a lot of underreporting. So if I was to make a suggestion, I would say bring in a language other than English into your classroom as you can. We're doing the translanguaging approach. Chris's situation, it was like straight up a nonprofit came to him and said, can you help us train people in a language other than English? And Kristen, you had something.
Oh, I was just going to say, so I moved to my current town, Wenatchee, Washington, from Salt Lake City, but I also previously lived in Memphis, Tennessee, which has a high Hispanic population. It's also high where I am now. And something that really interested me here is that many of the companies who advertise when they send like mailers to the inbox, it's already in English and Spanish. So I think even if you're looking at it from an economic perspective, as a business, you can reach more customers by, you know, offering your communications or marketing in more languages.
Yeah,
I didn't see that in Memphis at all, even though there was an opportunity to do that there as well.
Well, I
And
think
yeah,
it's
go
also
ahead.
understanding the value purchasing power of certain groups. I think that's the other piece that you start seeing, especially from a business competency standpoint, is they're looking at that where they're specifically looking. You're also seeing, like here in Colorado, we definitely have a high Spanish speaking population. One of the things that you'll see for a lot of businesses is the preferred hiring criteria is bilingual Spanish preferred. So like those are one of the things that you're seeing more and more of, is that from, especially in customer service, line managers are another area that I think probably might be a for those educators out there in world languages, might be an area that you might want to look at, is creating whether it's a non-credit or creating a class specifically dedicated to contextualizing the specific language for a subset of a certain area, whether it's a certain line manager or frontline supervisor, different things like that, where you start seeing a lot of public interaction, as well as when you start working with different sales associates and different pieces like that. So those are some things that you're seeing. You're seeing language as a competency, language as something that will get you an extra bonus. Because like a lot of these times, if you know Spanish, like that's the other thing, a lot of companies build in additional compensation if you have language proficiency other than English. So I mean, that's one of the things that you're also seeing as well, is there are incentives to learn. And I think the other big thing I put in the chat is also thinking about scaffolding. So if you're thinking about one of these things where you want to make your class more accessible or more welcoming to non-native speakers, that might be something that you want to look at, is this, how would you scaffold it? Now, it's not, the goal would be at the end of the semester, you would obviously still be doing everything in English, but it's also something that you could go ahead and put in to be more welcoming initially. But it all depends on what your take is, and what the purpose and what the class outcomes are. Obviously, if you're in an English class and you're teaching English composition, it has to be done in English. So it really comes to, from my perspective, it's all about the outcomes for the specific courses that are there. And then also what your program outcomes are. And so like those are things that we look at from an administrative perspective. But definitely happy to have discussions offline as well.
And I think we have to bounce now because we have to give this up. Yeah, Kristen, the language gap, you know, and the instructor, who knows, maybe it's just that low level welcome at the beginning. But if you have someone, you know, if you have someone who has some sort of proficiency, they might be able to bring it in. And thank you, Bruce. Okay, everybody, gotta say goodbye.
Thank you.